At 5:20 p.m., World Trade Center 7 collapsed. The following aired at 4:57 p.m. on BBC World News, a full 23 minutes before the actual collapse.
We'll leave it there for the moment. We've got some news just coming in, actually, that the Salomon Brothers building in New York, right in the heart of Manhattan, has also collapsed.
Here at the top of the BBC World News show, the anchorman states that World Trade Center 7 just collapsed. The show started at 5 p.m., a full 20 minutes before the actual collapse.
Welcome to BBC World News. I'm Philip Hayton. Heavy loss of life and catastrophic destruction. That's the scene on the streets of New York after the United States suffers what many are saying is the worst attack on the country since Pearl Harbor. A huge operation is underway to find survivors from the wreckage of both towers of the World Trade Center in New York. They collapsed after hijacked airliners with passengers on board were flown into them. The 47-story Salomon Brothers building, situated very close to the World Trade Center, has also just collapsed.
At 5:07 p.m., he goes to a correspondent in New York. She reports that World Trade Center 7 has collapsed, yet you can clearly see it standing just to the right of her head.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing, and indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning.
Here we can clearly see World Trade Center 7 on the right side of the screen as the reporter moves to the side and allows the cameraman to get a better view.
We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier today because of, course, the dreadful collapse of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. But New York, very much a city still in chaos. The phones are not working properly, the subway lines are not working properly. And we know that down there near the World Trade Center there are 3 schools that are being turned into triage centers for emergency treatment. And I know that over in New York Harbor, where the famous Statue of Liberty is, there's a field hospital where 1,500 people are being treated. And we have heard, though it's unconfirmed as yet, that 100 New York City police officers have been taken there as well for treatment. But we do need to confirm those figures for the officers.
It's now, what, some 8 hours since the attacks. Is there any estimate yet available of the number of casualties in the World Trade Center?
I think we can only go at this point with the words expressed by the mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, that it's too frightening to think how many there could be. We know that it's about almost 300 people on the airliners that were used in these attacks. But you've got to remember, this was 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning.
The live feed is lost at 5:14 p.m., 6 minutes before World Trade Center 7 actually fell.
This city and this country will not be the same. But they don't really know where to turn. That's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today, were completely flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley.
In this footage from CBS, you see the collapse of World Trade Center 7. It is clear that this is the same building that is to the right of the BBC reporter.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
So the question is, how did it come about that BBC World News reported on the collapse a full 23 minutes before it fell? Paul Joseph Watson and Alex Jones of PrisonPlanet.com originally reported on this on Tuesday, February 26, 2007. Later that day, I found the MPEG-2 source of the video in archive.org's archives and used it to put together this short film. Later that same day, archive.org removed the link to the lower quality Windows Media copy of the source video. Here's what it should look like with the video links on the left side. The next morning on the 27th, archive.org removed all BBC World News videos covering 9/11 from their archives. They also restricted access to hundreds of high-quality MPEG-2 source files from numerous news agencies, all covering the events of 9/11. The PrisonPlanet.com article the previous day led to a flood of emails demanding an explanation of the obviously inaccurate reporting. Part of the BBC's response on the 27th was this, quote, "We no longer have the original tapes of our 9/11 coverage for reasons of cock-up, not conspiracy." End quote. Richard Porter, Head of News, BBC World. We all need to ask ourselves, why is this information being hidden? Even the previous version of this short film has been removed from Google Video, even though it obviously falls under the protection of fair use laws. What are the odds that not only would the BBC lose their original tapes, but then archive.org copies would disappear as well? Help spread the word about this film. Pass the link to this page on or download and link to a Windows Media copy of this film at abuse-of-power.org/BBC WTC7.WMV.